Reverend Dave, thank you. It's a total honor to be in this glorious church. This is my third sermon here, and I have done, I think, a total of 7 Swedenborgian sermons because I studied for probably between 6 to 8 years at the Pacific School of Religion, Swedenborgian House of Studies, and these two graduated. They're ministers, and I debated my entire life since 12 years old. Was I going to be a filmmaker or was I going to be a minister? And the greatest compliment you just gave is that I was able to capture Swedenborgian thought in a movie. And for those that aren't Swedenborgian or don't know that they even understand Swedenborg, when you watch the movie, by the end you have a real foundation without even knowing it's Swedenborgian. So I want to talk about how I made that film and the 2 concepts of Swedenborg that, for me, I took away for all those years of studying. It was very hard to get your master's, and I couldn't read 600 pages a week, and I just kept on studying him. So I saw 3 classes graduate, actually. But the 2 thoughts that I came away with that I like to speak about today are that we are the internal church, and that is very Swedenborgian, and that we are eternal. So I want to make an intention with a prayer, and I'm just going to say right in the beginning of this sermon, God, Jesus Christ, let the world wake up to what Christ taught us, and that is that we never die, and we are eternal. And the way I found out about this, like most of us, is through suffering. And of course, I like to think I'm not dead right now, and that I'm alive here on the earthly realm, but I can tell you unequivocally, I believe and know 100% that we are eternal. And I will give you my journey of the story of how I learned that. And of course, if I die and find out that I'm really dead and I never was eternal, then we've got problems, right? But the point is that Heaven and Hell had a really wonderful passage. I took that class 3 times, the book, and this movie, Bardo Blues, that right now is in Santa Monica at the Lemley, right now, every day, 5 showings, and it's on Amazon as well, and I'm not here to just try to plug buying the movie. It is a great example of how I found out that we are eternal. And I think the most important thing is to talk about my history and then come to this idea. So at 12 years old, I absolutely had an awakening that I didn't necessarily see Christ, but I knew I believed in Christ. And I found out, that wasn't an abnormal thought. Like a lot of people at this, church as well as this Christ-based camp had this feeling. I also came to the thought that I wanted to be a late night host, and I watched Dick Clark every morning on Saturdays, the American Bandstand, and I knew that that's what I was going to do at 12. So I got very involved with the church. My parents didn't even go to church. They went at Christmas time and Easter. I went every Sunday with a girlfriend. I got very involved with the youth group. All of a sudden, my whole family's going to church. And there I was allowed, through service and working really hard at the church, to be able to do a sermon at 17. And people came up to me at 17 years old and said, "You've got to be a minister." And I had already had that thought because I love communicating about God. And it's probably the only place where you can unequivocally communicate about God. But I went and I studied communications and filmmaking because my real love also was really to be a late night host. So I studied, came out to LA here for the first 2 years from 22 to 24, and I got lied to, cheated, enough men making passes at me, and I just said, I was an innocent young girl from the Midwest. I didn't even know that people operated that, and as we know, that's the entertainment business. That's not all of Los Angeles. So I left and went to New York and studied and got my degree in Series 7 in Wall Street because I was going to make $1 million to do my late night show. And sure enough, I got lied and cheated to again, and I got out of Wall Street. And I'll fast forward, it took me 8 years to get on TV. It was finally in San Francisco. I got an entertainment reporting job, and I really didn't want to report on entertainment unless it was good entertainment, right? So I created an opportunity to do comedy on TV, And 4 years later, I hustled and I got Budweiser to sponsor my late night show. They gave me $2,000 per show. If you look at these late night shows right now, they are done for $1 to $2 million a show, okay? I got it all up on TV, a local station, then sold it to 12 small stations myself, and 14 weeks later, new general manager, I'm off TV, and I'm $150,000 in debt, and I'm 38 years old. So my dream is over with, and I even had one of the biggest agents in Hollywood, and I had met everybody down here because I wanted a national show, and every male executive told me there is no room, the world's not ready for a woman in late night, and that was 1998. So my father passes, and I am divorced, and I just thank God. You know, I believed in God, but I'm like, God, you have failed me. I really did have that thought. And I know that for anybody that's over 25, you've gone through enough suffering to understand that idea. So when he died, my father died, there was a suit thrown at me by the director saying that I hadn't paid my bills. And my father, who had been very successful, he created Kimpton Hotels, and it was wonderful to be his daughter, but you know, it's not like I was benefiting financially and the director thought I was. I was actually waitressing down the street because my dad wanted to make sure he taught the lesson that, you know, we work for every dollar that we get. And so he wasn't speaking to me when he died with the lawsuit. And that was heartbreaking to me, to not say goodbye to your father. So I went to Reverend Jim, who ran Swedenborgian House of Studies. Well, no, not yet. He was still in San Francisco, the minister, and he was moving over to become the dean at PSR. And he handed me this book called Awakened from Death. And my whole life changed. It was Pandora's Box. It's like I knew that we were eternal and that we never died. But when I read that book from Swedenborg, I mean, even right now, I get shivers. It's the best book ever. And it's one of the only few books you can read without a teacher. Because Swedenborg is very difficult. I took 3 heaven and hell classes, which is basically what this movie's about. And it's very hard to understand Swedenborg. So that's when everything opened up. I had a little bit money. I kept on making one project after another. For a solid 10 years, I couldn't sell anything in Hollywood. And they look at you, once you're 40, you're old and over the hill. So I end up gathering all my projects. I kind of make this story into my first film. Nobody sees it, doesn't get into one film festival. So I decide to risk everything. And it's in my book called Escaping Hollywood, Bardo, which really talks about my spiritual beliefs. I had studied Swedenborg, and I wanted it to be in this screenplay that I had written. And I wanted to also communicate what I understood about Buddhism. And I wanted the film to be shot in Thailand because that had a neutral zone, because as we know for Christianity, a lot of the Christian faith is ostracized for being extreme. And we know, as Swedenborgians, that's not the case at all. It's a very inclusive religion. So I knew that with my studies, the one thing that I had to reflect is that we have a choice every day between heaven and hell. The hardest thing is that you wake up in the morning, and if you're not immediately with gratitude saying, thank you, God, for the glorious day and the miracles that are about to happen, and that day doesn't turn out like heaven on earth, you know, it's a choice, because not every day is heaven. I mean, life is hard. There are obstacles thrown at us all the time. And I knew I wanted to put in my movie and my actual spiritual beliefs is that after a divorce, after my daughter, through that divorce, through my ex-husband, basically taking her away, getting her sent to boarding school, getting one phone call per week and one visitation per semester where I didn't do anything wrong. My daughter going on a community service project to Thailand where I thought that was a great idea at 17 years old, catching an undiagnosed parasite and being close to death 3 times, really, over an 8-year period, and going through the medical system where nobody could find it, so they told me I was crazy. We finally found it. She's doing well. And then recently, my brother's death, not talking to my father when he died, I thought, you know, I've gone through my share of suffering. And I know that every day I got to get up and I got to choose heaven. So I wanted to make sure, because through my practice of really suffering that got me to meditation and yoga and a daily faith practice, that I am choosing heaven every day. So I wanted to put that in the movie. And I also wanted to put the idea that we are eternal. So if you really study Swedenborg, and I'm not saying you don't know this already, but Swedenborg, through heaven and hell, basically he went and transported himself through really, really deep meditation. He had an incredible deep breath work that was kind of like Eastern religion. And he could actually see heaven and hell internally. And he wrote down in that book that basically when you die, which is that great passage, that the only thing that goes away is this body. That's the only thing. And that your mind is still internally seeing all this beauty or all this hell. And the only way you really are going to hell is that hell is if you committed some heinous acts or done wrong things. And that because once you do those wrong things, right, like commit a murder or rape, and we're not talking about stealing, okay? We're talking about horrible crimes, right? That your mind cannot forgive the act. You have to forgive yourself in order to understand what got you into that hell. But that's not the hell that I know. I know the hell that's probably what you deal with, which is the daily life of hell. The mind running itself over and over in an ego and saying, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? Why? And so through my meditation and my yoga practice, I was able to learn silence of the mind. And without anything changing in my outside world, nothing. I was just lucky I had some money, right, because my father had passed, and that's pretty huge. Nothing in the outside world. I wasn't in a relationship. My daughter had been sick. There were a million things in the outside world that weren't good, but my inside world was heaven. I knew I was going to make it. I knew every day it was a miracle. I knew everything was going to be great. So I wanted to put this idea that if the body just went away and I found heaven on earth, that's exactly where I'm going to go. So you may be really good people, you're still going to heaven. I believe that, okay, if you're good people. But the whole thing about being the internal church, which is what Emanuel Swedenborg spoke of, is it's about the mastery of becoming heaven, being the reflection of God, being the glory of God no matter what is in the outside world. Well, the opposite of that, which is the ending of my sermon, is that my brother didn't have that. My brother was diagnosed schizophrenic. I actually don't believe he was, because if you study Swedenborg enough, and Van Dusen was one of his students who set up a hospital in Mendocino for schizophrenics, and 1/4 of them were healed because he basically said they are spirits, as Swedenborg actually saw, but never said that's schizophrenia. And he talked to the spirits. Now, most of us cannot do alternative healing, and I don't suggest anybody not to take medication. That's not what I'm saying. My brother was a brilliant artist that suffered mentally so extraordinary, went in and out of hospitals. It was a journey, and he was brilliant, and he was wonderful. And we were extremely close, but he could not get to this thinking. No matter how many healers I went to, no matter how many churches I went to, no matter how many meditation yoga programs I went to, he just couldn't do it. He took the medication, he ran every day, 5 miles every day. That was his peace of mind, and he struggled mentally every day he lost his mind when he did LSD. So, a lot of people know that young men doing LSD in their 20s can lose their minds. So he lost his mind when he did LSD at 24. And from that point on until he passed at 47, it was a struggle. And we were all there for him. So I wanted to do a movie that embodied the hell that he went through and the heaven that I found. Because I, as an artist, had gone through a lot of hell, and I was making a conscious choice to find heaven on earth. He could not. He had moments like going skiing with me. He had heaven. So I sat down with the Swedenborgian thought. I wrote this movie. I did not have enough money. I went to him. He was my sole investor. I decided, this is not something I'm proud, the worst thing I've ever done, actually, and it's in my book. I decided to stop paying my taxes. We all have to pay our taxes. I paid my taxes, okay? I had always paid my taxes on time my entire life. I was 52 years old. Hollywood wasn't calling, okay? My dream was over. So I said, what the hell? Don't pay your taxes. Do the film. You'll pay your taxes. Nobody knew. I hired this incredible crew of 12 people. We went to Thailand. We had a crew of 5 there. Nobody knew that I wasn't paying my taxes. All they knew is they were going to get paid. I run out of money. I call my brother in Thailand. I said, I'm running out of money. It's, we're talking about minuscule amount of money to make this movie. It's not millions, right? It's in the hundreds of thousands. For me, that's a lot of money, okay? Because I didn't have it. So I called him. He sent the check. We went skiing. He says, when is the screening? I said, well, I have to keep on pushing it back, and I have to push it back and push it back because I didn't have enough money. So I had a little bit of inheritance coming in every single month that went right into the film. We're filming the last shot of the movie, and this is a spoiler alert, the last shot of the movie to show that we have to choose heaven and hell. And I get a phone call. We're in a Torrance hotel. I'm shooting the suicide scene. And I get a call. Well, I get 10, 15 calls when we open the door of the Torrance shot. We didn't want to show the suicide. We wanted to show before. And I get a call, my brother has committed suicide. Exactly like the character. And he didn't know the story at all. He didn't know the story was to prevent his suicide because I knew he had contemplated it. He didn't know anything. All he knew is that when he made that decision is that he went to black. He didn't believe in God. He didn't believe in Christ. He didn't believe in anything. Anything. So it was a very hard decision. And I don't judge him for his decision because he was in so much suffering, and that's what he had to do. So I got a movie that at the end of the movie is a suicide. And you find out that the person is in Bardo, which is a Tibetan word in Buddhism for the exact state that Swedenborg talks about, that exactly what says in heaven and hell. The body goes away and you don't know you're dead. And until you wake up to your death to choose heaven or hell, that's basically what I had studied. And what I have is the character go through hellish moments and then heavenly moments. Hellish moments and heavenly. And I play the role of Gabriel, which is the communicator of God. She's Gabriella. And I am communicating to the character, who is my brother, that you have a choice to choose heaven or hell. Choose heaven. And the only way he can choose heaven is through forgiveness. And so the character forgives himself and then goes to heaven. And that's what I want to end with, is that it was the most heartbreaking thing that I have ever gone through. But 24, 48 hours later, I turn on my favorite song, which is Pearl Jam, Alive, by Eddie Vedder. And I got Pearl Jam in my movie. I'm sure my brother was doing something up there because it's normally $150,000, and I got it for $10,000. Life wasted, and his life was wasted with death. I turn on the radio, because it's the first time I could drive after this news, and my brother knew how much I loved Eddie Vedder. He knew. And I hear my brother's voice come through that says, I'm alive. You're right, Marcia. And I heard it. I mean, it wasn't Eddie Vedder. I had listened to that song 1,000 times, and it was my brother. So he basically is with me. I have been on, the film came out in May. It's been reopened for World Mental Health Day on October 10th. I spent the month of May showing the film, and I've showed it, I would say maybe if I'm lucky, 1,000 people have seen it. And I have people come up to me, like last night in Santa Monica, my friend Jen Weigel's friend, come up to me and say, basically in so many words, you've saved my life. And that is very heavy for me because I'm not here. That's my intention, but when you hear it, you're like, what? I understand that we never die. I understand that I can't escape anything. So the work is here to find heaven. And thank you for your movie. Thank you for the symbolism that I see about we are eternal. And if I can just end with, every time I show that movie, I swear to God, I feel my brother's presence, that as much as he is out of suffering, he has forgiven himself for committing suicide, he is in heaven, I really feel that I would do anything to have him back today in happiness, not hell. But that the mission with this movie is so much larger than myself. That I didn't create this movie, God did. It just came through me. And the magic of this movie is something I'll take with me for the rest of my life, because I know unequivocally that we are eternal and that we choose heaven every day in life as well as death. So thank you. Thank you.